So let's start with quarterback Jay Cutler. I thought he had a very solid performance, especially considering the fact that the chemistry with the team is just not there yet. It's not where it's going to be. It's not at its best yet. It was nice to see him connect with Devante Parker as much as he did. I think 2 out of his 3 completions went to Devante Parker, and it would have even been more if it wasn't for penalties, which is unfortunate because the first few drives, or I think all of Jay Cutler's drives that he took with the first team were very penalty riddled. He had a 3rd and 27 at one point. He had a deep bomb. Well, not deep bomb, but it was like a 31-yard completion to Devante Parker on the right sideline. That was called back. So it was a better performance than the stat line showed. I thought his arm looked great. He had a play-action pass to Devante Parker. He threw it right behind C.J. Mosley and in between the corner, which was a great throw. That's a tough throw to make in the NFL, especially off of a play-action pass. Also loved the mobility he displayed. Obviously, that was a huge question mark going into this game. Where is Jay's athleticism at this point? And is he in shape? He looked pretty dang in shape to me. Obviously, Jay Cutler, if you watched, a lot of Jay Cutler, he's never lacked football instincts. I always thought he's had great football instincts and a feel for the pocket. That's never been a problem with Jay Cutler, and he displayed that perfectly. There was a couple plays where he stepped up into the pocket. Perfect example of that was the holding call that negated the 30-yard completion to Devante Parker. So I thought overall the performance was really good. I thought penalties really took away from more of us seeing Jay Cutler. Another thing that was really underrated is his command in the huddle. I thought the no huddle offense, he really got us going in terms of getting in and out of the huddle. It looked really good. The no huddle offense looked really, really, really nice. It looked better than it ever did last year in that small sample size that we got. So that was really nice to see. The no huddle offense looked that good. So overall, I thought Jay Cutler really did it was just a solid performance, and I thought it sucks because we could have saw more if it wasn't for penalties. Not his fault. Most of the offensive line that was out there, obviously Jesse Davis, who's our 3rd string guard, he did not play well, so most of it wasn't his fault, and it sucks we got that small sample size because of penalties. But overall, I thought it was a nice performance. It was good to see his mobility. He still has pretty dang good mobility. It was good to see his arm strength on display, and his accuracy down the football field. It was nice to see him and Devante Parker really have that nice chemistry. And it looks like we're going to talk about Devante Parker in a second, but Devante Parker looked really good on Thursday night. All right, so let's talk about one of the brighter spots of Thursday night, and that was Devante Parker. I mean, he looked amazing. He's looked so much faster than I've seen him. He looks healthy. He looks really, really good. He looked really good out there, man. That's the best I've ever seen Devante Parker. Moving in and out of his breaks. His route running's the best it's ever been. He just looks smooth out there. He looks ready. It looks like it's coming natural to him. He's playing fast. And you really are seeing the speed of Devante Parker. I don't think that's something we've seen that in flashes, but I don't think we've ever truly seen the speed of Devante Parker. A lot of people forget how fast he is and how big of a deep threat he is with his speed. And I thought that was on display, full on display. I thought that was full on in display on Thursday night. It was pretty immaculate. I loved what I saw from Devante Parker. And it sucks penalties took away from seeing more of him with the ones, and him and Jay Cutler really get going because he was dominating the competition out there. Devante, I mean, he was just dominating his matchup. So that was really nice to see, and because we didn't see that in the first preseason game like we saw it tonight. He just really dominated his matchup, and it was really nice to see that out of DP. All right, let's talk about one of the biggest storylines going into Thursday night, and that's running back Ajayi. Coming out of his concussion protocol, I thought he looked really, really good. Obviously, one of the bigger improvements we want to see of Jay's game is in the receiving game. Obviously, that was a huge part of his game at Boise State. It just really hasn't translated to the NFL for whatever reason that is. And, one of the bigger plays he made on Thursday was catching a ball from Jay Cutler on a little check down route and turning it upfield for a first down. Last year he really didn't look comfortable catching the football. He left a lot of big plays out there with either drops or, he just, when he caught the ball, it looks like he was catching a rocket. It just didn't look natural. It didn't come natural to him last year. So it was nice to see him make a play in the receiving game. He also looked really comfortable in the running game. And that is to be expected coming from Jay, but you really don't know what you're going to get. I mean, the man hasn't taken that many reps since he took the concussion protocol. It was really nice to see him look that good coming off the concussion. There was a 3rd and 27 play Third and 27 play that he took the handoff and he almost picked up the first down. And that was against the first team Baltimore Ravens. And he was running hard against one of the best rushing defenses in the league. And he made him look really silly on that play. And it was called back because of a holding. But it was a really nice run by Ajayi. He looked powerful as ever, just running through people. And it was really nice to see him look like that coming off the concussion protocol. Let's talk about cornerback Xavier Howard. He's coming off a performance that was disappointing for a lot of people. He didn't touch down a receiver. He looked like a rookie. He didn't look as good as he did in practice, in OTAs, in training camp. There was a lot of hype, a lot of people, including myself, saying that he looks like a number one shutdown corner. So it was nice to see him make a big play in Thursday night's game, especially on a deep route. Ryan Mallett let it fly, and he just ran the route for the receiver, and he displayed great ball skills on that play. You saw a lot of why a lot of people like Xavier Howard, including myself. For his size, he has great speed. And he's got great ball skills. And we saw all of those things on that play. He picked the ball off. It was a very hard interception. He kept his balance, which was pretty impressive for him reaching out to pick off that ball. But again, the size and speed combination for Xavier Howard is why a lot of people liked him coming out of Baylor. That was on full display on Thursday night. And it was really nice to see him make that play coming off of a disappointing performance against the Atlanta Falcons. Another huge storyline going into Thursday night's game is linebacker Mike Hull and how he was going to perform. I thought he looked really good out there. He really surprised me. He looked really comfortable with the first-team defense. He was getting out calls, and the number one thing I wanted to see from him is how good he looked in the passing game, because I think he performs pretty well in between the tackles, even though that's another area which I want to see him improve on. The thing that really surprised me coming from Mike Hull was his coverage. He had a pass deflection on Danny Woodhead. It was on a third down. They sent Danny Woodhead out. They really tried to attack the middle of the football field on that particular play. They tried to attack Mike Hull in coverage, and he looked really good. That wasn't the only play he had against Danny Woodhead. There was multiple other ones. I think there was 2 other ones where he had another pass deflection on Danny Woodhead. So I thought Mike Hull really surprised me in the coverage department. I mean, that play was classic Ravens in terms of trying to attack our defense, and that was against our ones against their ones. Obviously, Joe Flacco wasn't in the game, but it would have been the same result anyway. Mike Hull, they tried to attack him. He came up big on the pass deflection on third down. It was really nice to see that of Mike Hull, who looked really comfortable out there. All right, let's talk about the offensive line as a whole throughout the entire night. I thought the ones, which I guess you can call it the ones, even though our first team offensive line that we put out there on Thursday night was Jake Brendel, Jesse Davis, Juwan James wasn't out there. I think Sam Young was starting and places him with the ones. So most of the offensive line that we're going to see in the regular season was not out there. But Laramie Tunsil was out there. I thought Laramie looked like he was in preseason mode. He definitely didn't look like he was in regular season mode. He had a couple penalties called on him. Obviously, the offense as a whole, at least the first-team offense, which we really shouldn't call it the first-team offense, but the first-team offensive line that we put out on there looked discombobulated as an offensive line. In terms of penalties, they looked really, really sloppy in that area. Getting us a lot of down and distance. You can't get a second. I think we had like a 2nd and 6, and then we either had a false start called on us or something like that. The offensive line overall looked really sloppy, and they looked in full-on preseason mode with the first team offense. And then you look at what they did in terms of pass protection. It was really bad. Not really bad. It was just really poor. They let a huge hit on Jay Cutler, was Darius Smith. The Ravens defensive line got a lot of pressures, which again is to come to expected. The Ravens had their full-on first-team defensive line going against, mostly third-string to second-string players. So it was, I guess, come to be expected from our offensive line. But if those are the depth guys that we're going to be playing with for the most part. I mean, Anthony Steen and Craig Urbick wasn't out there, so the interior depth wasn't out there. But the tackle depth didn't look all that bad. But Jake Brendel, Jesse Davis, they didn't look great, especially Jake Brendel in the run blocking game. It was definitely tough for him to handle Brandon Williams. And Jesse Davis, obviously, he let up a sack and I think another quarterback pressure. So I thought the first team offensive line looked really discombobulated. And that was a trend throughout the night. I thought the offensive line had a pretty poor performance throughout the night. They let up a lot of sacks, a lot of pressures. It wasn't all their fault. Sometimes the quarterback didn't get the ball out of their hands in time. But overall, I thought the offensive line didn't look great. They didn't have their best performance. They definitely did not have the same performance as they did in last Thursday night's game against the Falcons. It definitely they weren't as consistent as they were back then. It wasn't all bad though. There definitely was some good. I thought Isaac Asiata had a pretty good performance, especially considering his fellow offensive lineman didn't have that great of a performance. I thought Eric Smith definitely took a step back. He definitely didn't have the same performance. I wanted to see consistency out of Eric Smith, the undrafted free agent from Virginia, and he had a great game against the Falcons, and he did not have such a good game against the Ravens. He let up a sack, I think, on Brandon Doughty. He did not look as good. So overall, the offensive line definitely took a step back from Thursday night's game against the Atlanta Falcons. So let's talk about the receivers, the running backs, the quarterbacks, and the tight ends for Thursday night's game. I thought the running backs overall didn't have the greatest performance in the world, but I thought Smosh Perry looked really good on that one drive, the only touchdown drive of the night. He looked really, really good. He looked powerful. He looked tough to bring down. He looked really comfortable within the Adam Gase offense, which was really, really, really nice to see. And that was by far the most consistent run blocking we had, was on that touchdown drive. And he really ran through arm tackles, ran through straight up tackles, and he looked really good overall. So I thought he definitely probably had the best performance other than Ajayi, who we got a super small sample size from. Smosh Perry looked really, really, really nice. I thought the tight ends were very disappointing. None of them got involved. I don't even think we had one reception from the tight ends. Not all their fault. I thought the quarterback's performance was pretty poor. So let's segue into the quarterbacks. The quarterbacks, they looked I'm not talking about Jay Cutler, and I'm not talking about Matt Moore. I'm talking about the third string, fourth string. I'm talking about David Fells and Brandon Doughty. They took a tremendous step back from last week's game. I thought the timing of last week's game against the Atlanta Falcons was really bad. And in this game, it looked even worse. Chemistry that they had with the tight ends and receivers was terrible. You saw a lot of balls that sailed over receivers' heads. The timing was off on some of the passes coming in and out of the receivers' breaks. It was not the receiver. There was people open, and they just didn't find them. And it just was bad. The timing with the receivers was bad, and the quarterbacks was just bad. I thought David Fells had a really nice drive with Marquise Gray on the only touchdown drive of the game. I guess so Marquise Gray was the only tight end to have receptions. I take that back. Marquise Gray looked really good on that one drive. He missed one touchdown in the end zone to Marquise Gray, who beat his man off of the line of scrimmage, and he was wide open in the end zone. David Fells couldn't get it to him. We ended up scoring a touchdown anyway with Perry. But I thought the quarterbacks overall looked pretty poor. I forgot about Marquise Gray. He had a strong performance on that drive. There was a play that David Fells escaped the sack in the end zone, and he pitched it to Marquise Gray, and Marquise Gray turned it upfield, showed some of his speed, and he's pretty tough to bring down in the open field. So I thought Marquise Gray had another strong performance from the Atlanta Falcons game. So I take that back about the Titans. He was the only one. Seriously, was the only one. I thought the receivers, mostly not their fault. Obviously, all eyes were on Demore Stringfellow. All eyes were on Demore Stringfellow because of the performance he had in last week's game. He had one play where we called a go route off of a play action pass. We were going aggressive. He was wide open. David Fells just overthrew him. You just got to give him a better pass there. He beat his guy. If you rewatch that play, from the time that he broke off the line of scrimmage, Jamore did a great job with hand fighting. I think he's a significant. I think he was consistent, even though he didn't catch anything because of some of the timing was off. He had one reception on a slant route. I think it was from Brandon Doughty, but that play that should have been a touchdown, and it wasn't because he was wide open on that play. So the receivers really didn't get a chance because of the poor play from the quarterbacks. I thought the quarterback play was terrible on Thursday night. They just didn't have timing. A lot of passes, the timing was so bad. A lot of passes were just sailing on them. I thought David Fells looked really nice on that first drive, and then from then on, he looked pretty bad. Some of it wasn't his fault. I'm not blaming it all on the quarterback. Some of it was the pass protection and the pressures. But we got in a lot of down and distance. That was pretty bad. And a lot of that had to do with the run blocking and penalties and all that other stuff. But the quarterbacks just really couldn't overcome that. I thought they were just shaken up for the rest of the night. So the quarterbacks really just didn't have the greatest performance. And I'm not really going to blame the receivers. This was by far, in terms of, when you look at the receivers, this is by far the worst performance that they have had, but it wasn't their fault. I really blame that on the pass protection. Some of it was on the pass protection. A lot of it was on the quarterbacks. We only had 67 passing yards going into the fourth quarter. That is unacceptable. as a unit. I don't care if it's the third, fourth string, fifth string, 10th string out there. You have to perform better than that. All right, so let's talk about the defense. The number one thing I really wanted to see was our defensive line versus the Ravens' offensive line, and their Ravens' offensive line has pushed around our defensive line for years now, and I thought they did a tremendous job against their offensive line. Granted, Joe Flacco wasn't out there, but I think it would have been the same performance anyway, especially in the running game. Our defensive line straight up dominated for the entire time their first team offense was out there. Our defensive line, or at least our first team defensive line, just straight dominated. I thought our rushing defense was tremendous. I thought the defense overall was amazing against the Ravens once. Now, granted, the Ravens do not have the greatest receiver core in the world, but their tight ends, those same tight ends, we really struggled against last season. And I thought we did a really, really good job overall. As far as I just thought our first team defense did a really nice job against the Ravens' first team offense, especially against when our special teams failed us on those fumbles and the blocked punt. The one drive that we had, or the one goal line stand that we had, was amazing, especially against the running game. I mean, last year's team would not have done that against that Ravens offensive line. We really did a good job. I thought John Harbaugh really wanted to play his first team offense a whole lot longer than we did at ours. He was trying to get something going with that team because we were straight up beating up on them. And if it wasn't for special teams errors, they wouldn't have scored. They just wouldn't have scored. Again, the only drive that they had that was, I guess you could say, legit, and it wasn't the defense's fault. They scored like a 50-something yard field goal with Justin Tucker. And overall, I thought the first team defense looked amazing out there. They straight up dominated their matchups. And then after that, when the backup quarterback for the Ravens, I guess technically their third string now that Joe Flacco's out, Woodrum or whatever his name is, came into the game. I thought our linebackers it was like a roller coaster. They just straight up dropped off. It was a super disappointing performance from last week, which I thought the linebackers looked encouragingly, good coming off of the Raekwon injury during that game, and we were looking at what the backups could do, and I thought they looked really good in last week's game. They were great in open field tackling. They looked nice in coverage, especially in open field tackling and in the running game. That's what I was really wanting to see. The rushing attack for the Ravens progressively got better. It wasn't like terrible. Like our rushing defense, when Woodrum or whatever his name is got into the game, that's when everything started to fall apart for our defense. But I thought it wasn't terrible. The thing that really struggled with the linebackers was in open field tackling. We were terrible, and that was so disappointing to see that. Max Williams, he had that. They ran that play like 1,000 times in our defense, and that play is designed to really attack. Motion everything from one side of the field, and it motions all the way into the other sideline on that bootleg into the middle of the field. It attacks the middle of the field, and it was basically wide open, and that's something I wanted to see. I thought the first team defense looked tremendous in that area, so it was nice to see them perform at a high level. But when their third string quarterback Woodrum came into the game, and you saw our young players get out there like Deion Lacey, who had a really tough, really good performance in last week's game, Chase Allen, all of those guys, they did not look as good. The Max Williams play, going back to the Max Williams play in the open field tackling, there was not one but two plays where Max Williams should have been stopped for short of a first down, and he somehow got the first down. That's unacceptable for your linebackers. Our linebackers definitely did not look physical enough against their tight ends. Most of the plays that they made were tight end. The touchdown, I'm not going to blame on our defense. I mean, that's just a tough situation to put our defense in anyway, but it was 3rd and goal. It was a busted coverage, and it was to a tight end. Max Williams had a really good game against us, and that was due to open field tackling. So I thought overall the defense looked really nice. Or at least our first team defense did. They looked really, really good, but when their third string quarterback Woodrum came in, it was basically downhill from there. Disappointing performance from our linebackers overall. Really, really, really disappointing, because basically all of their big plays were tight ends catching the football. I thought Cordrea looked really nice, which was really nice to see. Obviously, he got the sick interception on him. So the corners I thought looked pretty good. Most of it was just stupid stuff. The pass rush of the defensive line, like I said in the first team, they looked really nice. I thought it was much improved from last week to this week. I thought that was improved. We definitely got more pressures on the first team offense. Charles Harris, I thought it wasn't as good of a performance as last week, even though I still think he had a pretty decent performance. It was really nice to see the Baltimore Ravens first, because he got to start over Andre Branch in this game. It was really nice to see the Ravens have so much. They had two people blocking Charles Harris. They were double teaming him. They chipped him on every passing play. The tight end chipped him before they went out on their hot route. And so they were double teaming Charles Harris. So that's major respect to big number 90. And he still got some pressures. So that was nice to see out of Charles Harris. But the most disappointing thing from the defense of that night was the linebackers. Our linebacker depth did not look as good as it did last week. So that was really disappointing. Hopefully that improves against the Eagles. We'll see. But overall, the biggest disappointment of the night was the depth at the linebacker position. Another thing that really disappointed me was screens. Screens continue to be a huge problem for this Miami Dolphins offense. It's a huge part of Adam Gase's offense, and if we can execute these screens on a more consistent basis, then that's not going to be good for this offense. That is something that they need to improve on, and against the Ravens, it looked atrocious. It was pretty bad overall. Obviously, the performance of the receivers was disappointing, but overall the performance of the offense, especially with David Fells and Brandon Doughty, David Fells looked really good at the start. He had a really nice performance against the Falcons. Super disappointing performance against the Baltimore Ravens. He looked like his old self. It looked like he was really coming on and could probably even challenge Matt Moore as the backup quarterback, and he just fell off a cliff in this game. So those things were disappointing. Overall, I think there was some really nice gems overall in this team. I thought the first team, both sides, looked nice, especially the defense. If I had to give it to the strongest performance of the night, was definitely the first team defense. They should have dominated their matchups. Definitely would like to see some of these penalties cleaned up against the Eagles. That was ridiculous. The offense overall, the offensive line as a unit looked discombobulated all night. So some of those things were disappointing, but it was nice to see Jay Cutler I thought he got off to the right foot. Ajayi, coming off the concussion protocol, looked like the old Jay, and he looked even better in the passing game. And Devante Parker looked as dominant as ever. Definitely want to see Juice Landry get involved with Jay Cutler in the next Philadelphia Eagles game. Jay's definitely gonna take more snaps next game as well. So hopefully we see that connection happen. And definitely want to see Julius Thomas get involved. That was definitely disappointing in this game. Definitely didn't get involved enough. So overall, I thought the first team offense looked okay. I thought the first team defense was dominant. Let me know what you guys think of Thursday night's game, and I will see you guys in the next one. Alright guys, before we start the podcast, let's get through the rigmarole first. Remember guys, this podcast posts each and every single Wednesday. If you're in the mood for Dolphins content and you're not getting enough of it, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We upload Dolphins content on this channel daily. The first segment of the show, we go through the Miami Dolphins news you need to know about. The second segment of the show, we go through the AFC East news you need to know about. The third segment of the show, we preview all the Miami Dolphins games, and we highlight the players that you need to know about. The fourth segment of the show, we go through the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A.